Today I want to talk about my favorite art movement, which inspires me a lot at the moment, and it's Post-impressionism. By the way, in this head number 55, I'm going to follow some principles of this art movement and try to implement them into my style of painting. The palette I'm using here I will show as always at the end of the video. I'm not going to tell you the whole history of Post-impressionism, I'm sure many of you know it, and we see the works of the most famous Post-impressionist artists like Van Gogh, Paul Cézanne, Paul Gauguin, simply everywhere. What I find interesting in all that period of great art change, starting from the 1850s until the time after World War I, is how quickly and how radical the art has changed in that time. We know that art reflects the world in which it's being created. So obviously the artists back then felt that extremely fast change of the world and could show it in their works, not only through the subject, but especially through the way of painting. It is hard to imagine for us, but the very first art movement that broke the ice of classic approach in art, Impressionism, was a huge revolution back then. Knowing what came after, Impressionism seems to us like the most harmless of all new art movements. Many of us would even say it still belongs to the old academic art more than to the modern. Yet it was a storm in art circles back then. However, the wave was not to stop anymore. Impressionists opened the Pandora box, which made everyone realize art is not depersonalized anymore. Art is a reflection of the artist's feelings. Even more, the viewers can perceive these feelings, and all this makes the whole modern art so deeply emotional. Now, as we know, Impressionism is still considered as such a positive, light and kind art movement. Pastel colors, walking ladies in white dresses, a lot of beautiful nature and melancholic views. This was the spirit of passing Belle Epoque, how the society saw and felt it. But at the same time, many artists decided that this all is just a facade that covers the real world. They don't want to stay safe, they want to go to the epicenter of the breaking world. This is how the blue-blood aristocrat Henri de Toulouse-Lautrec settles on dirty Montmartre, filled with dubious characters. Vincent van Gogh drops his career as a priester and starts his vagabond journey, and Paul Gauguin leaves the whole European world behind and moves over the ocean. All these artists didn't want to show the world beautiful in a classic sense, as it used to be before. Even if the truth was inconvenient, they wanted to show it through their subject, but also manner. This is how Post-impressionism appears. What I especially appreciate in this art movement from a technical point of view is the colors. Of course, the main change into a game was brought by Impressionists, but in my opinion, Post-impressionists got it to a new level. While Impressionists were applying colors mostly with short brush strokes to catch the vibration, Post-impressionists made the brushwork bolder and more personal. Looking from that point of view, the works of Impressionists are similar in a way, but works of Post-impressionists are very different. You can recognize the artist by the way he applies paint and by the color palette he uses. And this was something completely new in art, even in this revolutionary time. If you want to find your voice in art, step number 1 is to create steadily. Make an artistic routine a part of your daily life. If you find yourself now in the situation where you don't know how to start and how to make this stone rolling, I invite you to join my inspirational and motivational online workshop Overcoming Art Block, in which I give 13 practical exercises for daily practice, but also a lot of emotional support. Start making more art without stress, fear, and doubts about yourself. So how do I implement the principles of Post-impressionism in my own art? Two things: colors and movement. The color palette doesn't have to be bright and extreme. Actually, the colors in famous artworks are very often balanced between each other. But what makes the Post-impressionism artworks look so bright and intense is the fact that the colors are very vivid and, so to say, open, which means you mix colors that are close to each other on the color wheel, so the intensity of the color won't be lost and it doesn't turn grayish. For my portrait, I took two different blues and an ochre to be able to change the temperature of the blue colors. Compared to the Expressionism art movement, which came later in 20th century and where the use of colors was even bolder and put over the proportions and shapes, Post-impressionists were still trying to make the things recognizable. No matter how you apply the color, the viewer will still understand what you are showing. That's why the common rules of planes and color temperature were still being followed. In my artwork, obviously I also added some exaggeration, but I still keep all the face feature not deformed. Instead, I implement another principle of post-impressionism, which is movement through the brushstroke. If you take a look at the works of Van Gogh closely, you will notice that every object he shows has its own movement and direction. This brings a lot of texture and at the same time structure to the artwork, still keeping it very much alive. Because if you don't make this, it might look simply like a chaotic bunch of brush strokes at some point, and the subject won't be recognizable. Therefore, in my portrait, the movement goes along with the volume of forehead, hair, nose, cheeks, coat, and so on. There is still so much to learn and to experiment. I hope you will stay with me in this exciting journey, and I'd really appreciate if you hit the like button and subscribe so more people could see my videos. I wish you all an inspiring day.